On this special edition of War Week Boxing, we have a special sit-down with one of boxing's best ambassadors, the Iceman, John Scully.
Prince of Darkness and Affordable Dentures proudly presents the Iceman, John Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. We appreciate you lending your talents to introduce one of the best ambassadors of boxing and, dare I say, one of the more underrated trainers of the sport today.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Iceman John Scully. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, I tell you what, guys, and no, that wasn't really Ozzy Osbourne. That was me. Yeah. But I tell you what, we have so much to discuss. In the immortal words of, Jerry Reed of Smokey and the Bandit fame, we have a long way to go and a short time to get there. So, Ice, tell us what you're up to, aside from the obvious, preparing your man for battle on June 1st. But tell us, what have you been up to, sir?
I keep busy in the gym. We have a gym back home in Hartford called the Charter Oak Boxing Academy. It's called COBA for short. And, I'm there. We have a bunch of kids, a lot of kids in the gym. So I help out training those kids a few days a week. And, I have my hand in a lot of things, I guess. I'm busy with, I'm always busy trying to raise money for fighters that are, have run into trouble after their careers are over. Most notably, Pritchard Colon and Wilfred Benitez and Gerald McClellan, guys like that. I've been able to help I sell memorabilia and things like that. And I raise, people buy it from me and then we give the money to whoever needs it at the time. So, that's probably my main focus.
And God bless you for doing it. I wish more did that. And once again, they should have a special surcharge for every pay-per-view. That $4.99 tax, and that money goes to all of our, former champions and, prize fighters in need. And I think every real fight fan would be more than happy to pay that. It's the least we should do. Right?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think.
Because I tell you what, that's why we originally became fans. And I know you're a passionate fan at heart, despite being in this brutal ass-beating business.
Right, for sure.
But I tell you what, when I was making that introduction, oh my goodness, on your social media profile, there were so many amazing pictures that I didn't know how to choose, but one really stuck out to me. And this is a gentleman who was one of the most famous actors of Hollywood in the 70s. And most people don't realize that he loved boxing, and that's why he made the main event with Barbra Streisand. And that's the incomparable late, great Ryan O'Neal. Right. Can you talk about that? And yeah, he managed fighters, didn't he?
He managed Hedgeman Lewis, actually.
That's right. He was featured in that movie, by the way.
Yeah. Ryan was a great guy. It's funny, when I was a little kid, my father used to take me to the drive-in all the time. Back in the day, drive-in movies were a big deal. And So he would take me to all the R-rated movies and all the, all the movies, the rough movies. I was a little kid and I was watching The Godfather and, all that type of stuff. And one of the main movies that I always remembered as a kid was Paper Moon with Ryan O'Neal and his daughter.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So one day, must have been 10 years ago or so, and I saw that Ryan O'Neal requested me as a friend on Facebook. So my original thought was, wow, this is crazy. Yeah, I'm gonna accept him, and I accepted him. Then I started thinking about it, and I was like, man, I don't think this is Ryan O'Neal. Like, why would Ryan O'Neal? Why would he? Ask to be my friend on Facebook? He doesn't know me, And so what happened was a few months later, I had a program book from a Steve Collins fight, Irish Steve Collins, and it was him fighting Sammy Story for the Irish national championship as a pro, and I sparred with Stevie for the fight, and so Ryan sent me a message, and he wanted to know if he could buy it. And I'm like, oh man, you're Ryan O'Neal. I'll give it to you. And he said, oh, well, okay. So I'm getting ready to mail it. And I started thinking, I said, man, what if this isn't Ryan O'Neal? What if this is some kid or some guy playing a joke? And I give this thing away for free. So I messaged him. You got to realize this is me messaging Ryan O'Neal, Academy Award nominee. And I say, listen, could you do me a favor and just prove it's you? Like, could you take a picture of yourself? A casual picture. And he did. He sent me a picture right away of him on his back porch. I saw, oh, wow, thank you, man. Okay. And then I started thinking about it. I said, listen, I hate to do this. I hate to bother you, but I guess anybody could get a picture of you off the internet.
Oh, jeez.
Could you take a picture of you giving me the peace sign? And he did it. He sent me a picture of him giving me the peace sign. So I knew it was him. I mailed him the magazine. And so what happened was a couple years later, him and Ali McGraw did a play, a stage play called Love Letters. Now, this is 50 years or so after
Love
they
Story.
were in the movie Love Story.
Yeah.
So he invited me. I was in Florida. He invited me to the show in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. So I went and, hung out with them, hung out with Ali McGraw. We went to dinner and everything.
Wow.
But during the show, he actually changed one of the characters' names from whatever it was to John Scully. So Ali McGraw had to say my name 3 or 4 times in like a minute. And me and my wife were the only ones in the audience who knew what was going on.
That is amazing.
But then a year or so later, he comes to Hartford, where I live, to do the play at the Bushnell Theater. So he asked me, he said, hey, could we spar with each other as sort of, publicity for the show?
Wow.
Oh, man. And if you go to YouTube, there's a video of me and him sparring. And there's also a video of him and I on the news talking about how we met. And so him and I sparred with each other, and Ali McGraw was there, and she was nervous. She wanted to talk to me beforehand and told me, she hopes I don't hurt him. And, that's how you're good. You're good. So that's how we became friends. And he sent me gifts in the mail, and just, I sent him gifts in the mail. I bought him a book.
Oh boy, we just lost ICEMAN. John Scully got disconnected, but here he is again, guys.
What's that?
As you were, sir.
No, I was just saying it's surreal for him and I to become friends and email each other, and actually I knew he was sick a little bit because a year ago I was supposed to stay at his house in Malibu during the West Coast Boxing Hall of Fame. And at the last minute, his secretary emailed me and she said, listen, Ryan's not feeling well. It's probably not a good idea that you stay at the house, but he's going to put you up in a hotel. And I said, oh, okay, no problem. And when I got to the hotel, it was called the Garland Hotel. It is a famous hotel in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, man, this place is really awesome. It's like old Hollywood. And I asked the lady, I said, out of curiosity, I asked the lady behind the desk, I said, hey, how much is it for a room here every night? And it was something like $550 a night. And he paid for me to stay there. So really, really amazing guy.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And yeah, he definitely had a passion for the sport. And one thing that the late, great Don Chargan, one of my greatest mentors, Hall of Fame matchmaker and promoter, one thing he insisted to me, he said, Joseph, if an actor had a chance of being a truly great prize fighter, it was John Voight. Did you ever hear those stories of John Voight actually whooping that ass in the gym in preparation for his boxing movie?
Well, let me say this. I'm not disputing that, but I will say this. They've always done that. They did it with Sylvester Stallone. Mm-hmm. They did it with Robert De Niro. They say they did it with Will Smith. It was embarrassing the way they did it with Will Smith. Like they said,
oh gosh,
Will Smith was holding his own with James Toney. With James Toney, he's holding his own.
No,
oh, come on,
no,
stop it. Stop. Like I get it. You want to sell the movie, but we know they're actors. We know that.
Yeah, and, of course.
So it's just the way it is. Like Will Smith couldn't be a pro. Robert De Niro couldn't be a pro. Sylvester Stallone couldn't be a pro. Like you're going to tell me that all these other guys have to go through years and years of amateur fights and all this stuff they have to do. But these guys at 25 years of age, first time wearing gloves, and you're going to turn them into the middleweight champion. I mean, come on. And, I remember, I think it was Jake LaMotta who actually said that about Robert De Niro. He said he could have been a contender or something.
Oh, Chihuahua.
Listen, I still like the movie. I'm still going to watch the movie. I'm still going to pay. You don't have to fool me. It would be like, you say that Robert Redford was in a baseball movie and somebody
Natural,
said, if he trained for a couple months, he could play for the Yankees.
Come on. Yeah.
Boxing is not that easy. And I don't care how good you look on set of a movie where they can yell cut. You come in a real boxing gym and you're famous and you're going to get wiped out still.
Yep, indeed. You hearing that, MMA guys? You hearing that? And there it is. So speaking of pretenders and not contenders, guys, here's our first special John Scully Fact or Fiction.
Hey, we ain't ducking and dodging nobody. It's time for Fact or Fiction.
Thank you, Floyd. Appreciate it. Guys, number one, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson will prove to be much more impactful to the future health of the sport in the American market, either positively or negatively. Fact or fiction, sir?
Fiction overall. I think.
God, I hope so.
It's going to be a big thing driven on the fact that people who aren't real boxing fans, that's who's really going to watch it. You know what I mean? Like I forgot about it till you just mentioned it. Oh. I forgot about it. I forgot it was happening because it's just, it's insanity. It's not legitimate. And the thing is, Jake Paul, you got to give him credit for trying. He's trying to be a fighter and all that. I give him credit for that. What I do not give him credit for, when I don't respect him for, is he tries to act like he's already a top fighter, and he acts like, he's fighting. Like he said, I'm fighting the greatest heavyweight champion ever. I'm going head to head. No, you're not. You're fighting a 60-year-old man. Come on, this is insanity. And, I personally hope they don't put a leash on Mike. I hope they give him the go-ahead to do something. But I have the feeling they won't. I mean, because Jake is the promoter of the fight.
Of course.
So he's not going to be able to. I don't think he's going to promote a fight that he's going to get himself wiped out in. And I don't think he's talking all that crazy talk. He's talking that crazy talk because he knows Mike's not going to try and hurt him. You know what I mean?
Well, I tell you what, let's hope you're wrong, and let's hope he takes his head off.
Right. I have no problem with it. Mike does that because you know what? Evander Holyfield, a few months ago or a year ago, whatever it was, he stepped in on a week's
Oh boy.
and he fought that guy,
Oh.
whoever it was, and he got stopped in the first round. It's such an embarrassment to our sport. And he was like 59 or 60 years old. It's just insanity. They're making our sport look crazy. They're making it look like anybody could do it. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. And I've seen this play out many times over the years. I've actually taken care of business when it comes to this stuff, but it's going to happen more now is when you get guys walking in off the street with no experience whatsoever, but they think because Jake Paul's doing it, that they could be a fighter and they can spar with the guy in the gym, the best guy in the gym.
Oof, someone's going to get hurt.
Out. And I remember so many times guys would come in and fighters in the gym would literally argue over which one got to beat him up. Like
oh
which
boy.
Can't. Like, let me get him, coach. No, let me get him, please.
Yeah.
And I mean, me personally, I mean, I've taken care of a few of those guys myself. Yeah. For sure.
Well, I tell you what, guys, if you have any questions for our esteemed guest, please let him fly. Our first one comes from our dear friend Sly Tendencies, and thank you for the super chat, sir. He says, Ice, Will Smith couldn't even put Chris Rock on his butt. Stallone said he sparred with Duran. Okay. He said if the fight was real, it would last 11 seconds with the 10 count. People need to get a grip. Very, very nice.
Has an idea, because you know why? I don't know if you know this, but in Rocky 2, Duran was in that movie, sparring, and you could see like he's much smaller than Stallone, and he's moving around, and I mean, if these guys wanted to, like he would literally decapitate Sylvester Stallone, literally, and so people need to know that. And I've had guys literally. I had a guy, and he may even be watching this. He's on my Facebook page. He's a kid who grew up in my town, and he'd be about 30 something now. But when he was about 17 or 18, he walks in my gym. I didn't know who he was at the time. Turns out he was a big time football player. Like everybody knew him as a football player. And he walks in my gym and he says the first words out of his mouth, and he was with like 4 or 5 people. He goes, "Show me something I don't know."
Oh boy.
And I said, "Listen, I don't have all day to tell you all the stuff you don't know, but why don't you be more specific?" And I knew what he wanted, and he wanted to spar. I said, "Well, there's nobody really here to spar but me. I'm the only one." And he's talking about how he would do this. And I said, "Listen, I'll put the gloves on." And I was about, at the time I was 47 years old. And I said to him, "I will put the gloves on with you, and I won't even hit you, or I won't hit you hard. And I will wear you out. I will play with you." And he couldn't believe it. His friends were like, "Oh no, man, he's tough. He's this and that." I said, all right. No exaggeration at all. Zero exaggeration. I put the gloves on with him, and I walked right to him with my hands up high, and he threw a bunch of punches. He was so tired after, I would guess, 25 seconds, realistically, 25 seconds. And I walked up to him, and I put my hands up, and I put my forehead on his forehead. And I said to him, "Do you have any idea how easily I could annihilate you right now? How I could paralyze you if I wanted to?" And I started tapping him in the face, like really lightly. I just played with him. I just wanted to show him what he's dealing with, because he's lucky he met me. Because if he went into gyms in Hartford like it used to be, like there was a guy named Duke, right, in Bellevue Square in Hartford in the projects.
Mm-hmm.
If you went in there he would have someone with express orders to knock you out. Like there was a guy, Kuda Leak, right? And he would tell Kuda, come here, take care of this kid, spar this kid. And Kuda knew, I'm gonna brutalize this kid. Like, this kid's done. And luckily, this kid met me, and I played with him as a way to show him. Because believe it or not, and you know this, I'm sure, there are, I don't know if it's hundreds, thousands, millions. There are people on this earth who literally think they can walk into a boxing gym and spar with real fighters and do well. They think they can do
boy.
well. And it's insane. But we're the only sport that would get that. Like, you would never have a guy go to the Yankees and go, yeah, let me see if I can hit a couple off of I don't even know the pitches. But like, nobody would do that because they know they can't hit the pitch. Nobody would go, hey, I'd like to race Usain Bolt. I think I could give him a run for his money. Nobody would do that. But for some reason, it must be a man thing. Nobody wants to be told they can't fight. So you tell someone, you couldn't beat that guy. What are you talking about? I could beat that guy. What do you mean? That guy's ranked 4th in the world. I could. But people don't want to believe. And I say, I mean, to your listeners, right? To your listeners, anybody out there who thinks you could go in the ring with no experience and box a real fighter, you cannot. You would get, if you wanted to, you would get brutalized worse than you could possibly imagine. And I've seen it so many times. It's almost like hard to believe that they still show up.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's shocking. I don't know if it's just a man thing, but it's an ignorant and stupidity thing.
Yeah. It's all the same package.
Oh boy, I tell you what, it sure seems that way nowadays. But yeah, Sly, thank you so much for your super chat, and thank you for the comment directed towards our brother, Iceman John Scully. And you know what? It's been a minute since we've had featured you, since I've actually been able to do an interview. I think President Obama was still in office last time I spoke with you live on the air. And that's before podcasts were a thing. I think it was Blog Talk Radio. Boy, seems like an eternity ago. But here's one. Here's another one. Oh boy. Here it is. Sly also has another question, and thank you once again for that super chat before. He says, has ICE ever seen anyone who's trained like Artur Beterbiev?
I've had guys, and I've seen guys who train hard. Like, there's a lot of guys who train hard, but Artur has something, and I always use this example. You may have heard me say this on the podcast or something, but I'll give you something that they don't have, that I've never seen anyone. Joe Smith on a Saturday for the undisputed, for the unified title. He was fighting. Mm-hmm. He had the WBC and the IBF, and he was going for the WBO from Joe. He beats Joe, stops him in the second round, goes home to Montreal the next day. 7 o'clock the next morning, meaning he had to get up at 6 to get ready and go to the gym. 7 o'clock the next morning, he's in the gym, and I have it on video. It's on my YouTube page. He's in the gym training, hitting the tire on the wall with 2 sledgehammers for 3 minutes around. Nobody's doing that. I don't care who you present to me. They're not doing that. And I asked him about it once recently, and I said, why would you do that? Like, what are you doing? And he's just like he didn't understand why it was unusual. He's like, I was training. I go, yeah, but it was 2 days after the fight. Like, what are you talking about? And it's just so crazy to him to not do that. Like, that's his work ethic. That's what he does. That's what he does. The same way people brush their teeth, right? They get up and say, I got to brush my teeth. I have to eat breakfast. I have to check my email. Well, he's like, well, I got to get up. I have to train. I have to work out. And I don't know too many guys like that. And I know guys who, when they're in camp, they're beasts, you know, and they train.
Oh
but
yeah.
not 2 days after winning the world.
That's amazing. And yeah, his work ethic and his power has become stuff of legend, almost
Right.
Paul Bunyan status among the diehard boxing community. So please set the record straight. How strong, how powerful is this guy?
Well, I'll tell you what, Lionel Thompson, they call him Lonnie B.
Lonnie B is a great guy.
Lonnie B, right. Lonnie B is on YouTube, and he told me this himself, but he's told the story on YouTube. He said when he was like, I think 19 or 20, he said he got hit by a car. He said getting hit by Artur is worse than getting hit by a car.
Oh,
So there you go.
Oh boy. I tell you what, Dmitry Bivol, boy, I better be ready because he's going to get it. He's going to get it. This isn't Canelo Alvarez. This is Artur Beterbiev. Are you a bit surprised, though, that 20-0 with 20 knockouts, that people aren't yet, they don't have him in the top 4 or top 5 of their respective pound-for-pound lists, that he seems to be very overlooked but because to everyone that I speak to within the business, they insist that Artur, you could plop him in any era of great light heavyweights, and he would do just fine. Are you a bit surprised that most people haven't gotten the memo yet?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. There's two things. I'll say two things about that. One is that I think people watch boxing on the surface, right? They see the surface. And on the surface, you get the impression that he's a destroyer. He's Clubber Lang. He's Mr. T in Rocky 3, right? You know, and that's what the results are. He kills people, right? He crushes guys. But you have to realize if you watch it, you know, he's scientifically setting things up. You know, he's doing it scientifically. He is an excellent, underrated, very intelligent boxer. 100% he is. He's not just a destroyer. He's a calculated destroyer. My other thing is this. People, they romanticize certain fighters in certain eras, right? Now, you could say the light heavyweights of the 70s, you know, they were, you know, in the early 80s, you know, you had Marvin Johnson and Mike Rossman and Saad Muhammad and Dwight Braxton, you know, and it was a great era.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it was phenomenal. Jerry Martin and, you know, James Scott and all these guys, Eddie Gregory. But part of the reason it was great is because those guys were equal. Like they could take each other's punches. They could make it great fights.
Indeed.
Now, as legendary as he is and as awesome as he was, and I love him, but you're not going to sit there and tell me Matthew Saad Muhammad is going to take punches repeatedly from Artur Beterbiev and not get knocked out. That's just stupid. That would be insane to think that. Or, you know, Matthew Saad would walk into, you know, nuclear bombs and he would get knocked out. Like, that's just the way it is. You know, you're not going to do that with Artur. You're going to have to fight a very smart fight. And I see someone saying here, Sly, saying how I saw him flipping an Olympic bar with the one hand. And I'll tell you what happened. He was doing that in the gym. And it didn't occur to me how heavy an Olympic bar is. Because he made it look so easy. I didn't even blink. I just looked over and I was like, yeah, that's cool. And then somebody was like, man, that's crazy, huh? And I'm like, oh, what do you mean? They go, do you know how much that bar weighs? Like, I go, I don't know, 10 pounds, 7 pounds. They go, man, it's like 40 pounds, 35 pounds. Flipping it around, it looked like a circus performance. And he was, you know, he you know, those girls and they have the batons.
Yeah.
He does it like a cheerleader would do with a baton. He does that with the weight bar. Like, honestly, if you told me that somebody could do that, I would go, nah, you're crazy. I would have to see it to believe it. And he just flips it around like it's nothing. I've seen him do stuff in the gym that, really, really impressive, like physically really impressive.
Wow. You know what? And while we're still on Artur, please, and once again, I know a lot is lost in translation. Very articulate, very, very intelligent fighter. But we don't speak Artur. So please translate this for us on the during the press conference when they had the stare down with Dmitry Bivol.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, he knows. He knows. What exactly did that mean?
Well, I know they sparred with each other before, and that could have something to do with it. I mean, I think here's what I think, honestly. When they met each other in Saudi Arabia a few months ago, it was I'm sure it's on YouTube, and
it was before the Fury and Ngannou fight. Yeah.
Right. And they approached each other, and somebody asked, they asked a question. I think it was Ellie Sekback or whatever. And you could clearly, and I'm big on body language, and you could clearly see that Dmitry was uncomfortable being around Artur. You could clearly see it. And Artur was confrontational. Like in their meeting, he was confrontational. And they asked, Dmitry, why doesn't he fight or whatever? And Dmitry looked like he was giving an answer that he was trying to find an answer to give. And Artur just said in front of him, he said, he always says he wants to fight, but then he never fights. He goes, I don't know. And, in that confrontation, like if you're going to choose who you would rather be, you'd rather be Artur. He kind of punked him, if that's the term. He kind of punked him. Now, it could mean nothing, but I think that's maybe the mentality that Artur was referring to. Like, Artur's all about it. Like, he's right there. Like, Artur's the type of guy, if we meet each other at the weigh-in or at the press conference and something has to happen, then I'm all about it. I'm not gonna start it. I'm not gonna instigate it, but I'm ready for it if it happens. And I think Dimitri's not thinking in those terms. So they're a little bit different mentality, I think.
Oh boy, I'll tell you what. Was that an ominous sign of things to come if you're Dmitry Bivol?
Right. Like I say, I'm sure when Dmitry looks back at that encounter, he's like, man, I blew it. I blew it. Like, because like I say, if you're, it could mean nothing, but it means something. It means something when you look at two people and their initial reaction to a confrontation, right? Like if you're in a nightclub or a bar or wherever, and two guys are about to fight, you can kind of see sometimes one of them, despite what he's saying, clearly does not want to fight. Right? You can see that he doesn't want to fight. Yep. And you can see the other guy's ready to die. You know what I mean? So yeah, you can feel it. You can definitely feel it. And I think Artur exudes that, where Dmitry kind of wanted to be philosophical and calm and professional, which I respect, but Artur is a different mentality of a man.
Yep. And Zakaria, thank you so much for joining us, sir, and supporting John on this special episode of War Week Boxing. He says, I'm in Saudi, and here everyone loves Beterbiev.
Yeah.
I
would think going there, we're going to feel very comfortable. He's going to receive a hero's welcome. You've got to give Bivol credit for taking a fight with Artur there, of all places.
Oh boy. Yeah.
That's not Artur's hometown, but it may as well be.
Yeah, and look, a very dear friend of ours and a very dear friend of yours as well, Mr. Dmitry Salita. He knows all too well he said that was the worst fight experience he's ever had, fighting Amir Khan.
Right.
There.
Yeah, Dmitry, my buddy since he was a little kid.
Yep. What a great ambassador for the sport he is as well. And I think he's doing a tremendous job, and he gets it as a promoter.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're all for, in my best Emmanuel voice, big time boxing USA. Yeah. Yeah. We love it. We love Dmitry on this show. We love Emmanuel. And please, I often tell Emmanuel Stewart stories on this channel because I was lucky enough to work with him for about 3.5 years at the tail end of his life. I did commentary, and I did ring announcing for him, and I did PR work for him. And it was a geyser of knowledge, and it was such a beautiful boxing education. And I was just humble, and I was like a sponge, and I shut up and I listened, and I learned so much. What is your favorite? The one just rattles off the top of your head. What is your favorite Emmanuel Stewart story, sir?
Well, I'll tell you a funny thing. I don't know. I assume you know. It's easy to research. Like I do these amateur boxing reunions, and I've done them in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Foxwoods Casino. I've done them in Connecticut. I've done them in New York City, Detroit, and I mean, I've had Tommy Hearns, Roy Jones, Mike McCallum, like Riddick Bowe. So many guys have come to my reunions, and we do them. Part of the reason I started doing that is because of Emmanuel. He gave me the planted the seed back in 1997. We were in Germany, and he said to me, he goes, man, I never met anyone who keeps in touch and knows more people than you do. He said, everywhere I go, somebody's telling me to tell you hello. And guys he knew, from guys I knew from Detroit. And he said, I don't know if he used the term ambassador, but that was his idea, And I remember thinking, and based on that, I was like, man, it's kind of crazy. Like, he's right. Like, I am in touch with a lot of guys.
Indeed.
And it's funny because when I tell guys like, yeah, I just talked to so-and-so the other day, and, oh man, I haven't talked to him in 20 years. And so I started saying to myself, man, I could put these guys together. I said, wouldn't it be great if we all just met somewhere, and instead of me connecting one or two of them together, I could connect them all. And that's turned into something where we've done reunions. And I mean, I got Roy Jones and Kelsey Banks together in Las Vegas in 2014, which I didn't even realize. And I have a picture of the exact moment when they met. They hadn't seen each other since the 1988 Olympics, when they were on the Olympic team together. So well over 20 years, they hadn't seen each other. And, there's many instances like that. I reconnected Alex Ramos and Mike McCallum, who had fought each other in the 1980 Golden Gloves in New York City.
That's amazing.
They met each other in, I believe it was 2016 in Las Vegas at my reunion. So there's been situations like that. I actually met Michael Nunn for the first time since our fight at one
Michael
of my
second to none
in Los Angeles in 2018. Me and Michael reconnected in person in Las Angeles.
Well, I tell you what, what's amazing is I'm here outside, and I always like conducting these interviews in the fresh air. And wouldn't you know it, some jackalope decides to mow his grass as soon as we're doing this interview. Isn't that convenient? But I tell you what, we want to thank our brother Bruce Cass Boxing Jazz and More for being the great ambassador as well. He's got that passion, and I can tell you things that Scully has done for former boxers that would bring a tear to your eye. Absolutely. And that's why I introduced him the way I did. So here we go. One more. Fact or fiction.
Hey, we ain't ducking and dodging nobody. It's time for fact or fiction.
Thank you, Floyd. Thank you very much. We appreciate it, Floyd. And he says, fact or fiction, although many believe Dmitry Bivol will easily outpoint Artur on June 1st. The heavy-handed Montreal resident will viciously KO the current WBA champ and become the undisputed king at 175. And David Benavidez will still insist that he brings nothing to the table. Fact or fiction?
Benavidez. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I can see that only because sometimes guys try to downplay someone that they don't really want to fight so that they don't have to fight them. You know, they say, oh, that guy hasn't earned his place. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you know, so it's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. Sometimes I've seen that more and more. They actually had the thing, who was it recently? Canelo, who actually kind of shocked me with his downplaying of Benavidez. That was kind of weird. I was surprised to see that from Canelo. You know, I didn't expect that kind of vibe from him. You know, I don't know 100%, but if I'm out in the street and somebody's telling me the story, I'd say, yeah, he doesn't want to fight. You know, that's the vibe. That's the impression he's giving, and that surprised me coming from him. I didn't expect that from him.
You know, I think it had more to do with the media in attendance when they're trying to promote a fight with Jaime Munguia, right?
Yeah.
Which is a legitimate contender, former champion at 154. And everyone kept asking him about Benavidez. I think he said that because he wanted to shut them up.
Right,
because you know you're a prize fighter. To step in the ring, you've got to be brimming with confidence.
Right.
In his mind, he thinks he could whoop anyone's ass on any given day. In fact, in his mind, if they paid him enough, he would step in the ring with Anthony Joshua and truly believe he would win.
Right.
And so, did you hear the entire fact or fiction, or was it cut out?
I'm not sure.
Okay, let's try it again. Although many believe Dmitry Bivol will easily outpoint Artur on June 1st, the heavy-handed Montreal resident will viciously KO the current WBA champ and become the undisputed king at 75. And David Benavidez will still insist that he brings nothing to the table.
Well, I'd say that's a little bit of fiction because if he did say that, if anyone said that, you know, you'd have to say, okay, you're just being foolish, ignorant, or, you know, you just literally don't know any better. You know, like Arthur's already solidified his place, but
That's
being
it.
undisputed and beating Bivol, let's face it, that's a huge victory. It's a huge, you know, event in the boxing game. You know, I don't think there's any right-thinking person in the world who's not going to have the winner up high on a pedestal.
You know, it's amazing. So this is a dream team in terms of a corner, right? Mark Ramsey, one of the more underrated trainers in all of boxing. Yep. Russ Amber there is Cup Man, and he's a great trainer as well. That guy's a jack of all trades. He can do it all. And then you, Iceman John Scully. I can't think of a better corner than possibly no, I can't think of a better corner, John. So what goes into game planning for someone like Dmitry Bivol?
Well, I mean, the same thing that we always do. You know, Mark is a very good trainer. He's a very hands-on trainer. You know, he's the top. He's the head guy. He orchestrates everything. And, you know, we watch films. We just watched films of Bivol today, as a matter of fact. And, you know, believe it or not, and I didn't believe this when I was a kid. I thought all trainers were like this. But a lot of trainers literally just train guys. They work them out. They get them in good shape, and they go fight. They don't really focus on specifics. It's kind of amazing. And Mark is definitely not like that. Like, he's watching films all the time. He's trying to break everything down scientifically, coming up with a game plan. And that's, you know, this fight obviously is no different. So I highly respect and recommend Mark as a trainer. He's really a hands-on 100% trainer.
You know what? And what you said is absolutely correct. I work with a lot of different promoters and trainers and fighters. And you're right. It's shocking, actually. That's like Andy Reid getting ready for the Super Bowl to play one of the best teams, obviously the best team in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers, and he doesn't watch tape.
Right.
That doesn't happen. So why does that happen in boxing?
Guys because they can get away with it. Like a lot of trainers, I think they just want to do whatever they can get away with, without doing a lot. And, I've seen trainers, and I'm not going to name names, but I mean, I've seen trainers of very good fighters. And literally, like, other than, telling them to hit the heavy bag and things like that, they didn't really go the extra mile. And I could tell you that Russ Amber as a trainer was like that. I was in training camp with him several times, and he was like that. He was definitely like that. He was very hands-on, and Mark is like that. And I'm like that. You have to be like that. But I'm kind of amazed that there's a lot of guys that really aren't.
It's shocking. And Hashface, just so you knew I wasn't forgetting about you, that's the reason why I asked that question. So thank you, Hashface, for supporting John on this day and for the fine questions. Guys, we are on borrowed time. So if you guys actually have any more questions for our brother, please let him fly at this time, because we only have about 13 minutes left with him. And Zakaria Khan, once again, thank you for hanging with us, my friend. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy this fight coming up on June 1st. The entire fight card looks amazing. He says, Ice, who's your favorite all-time boxer? Can you even answer that question, sir?
Muhammad Ali. 100%.
There it is.
Muhammad Ali is the reason I'm boxing. If there was no Muhammad Ali, I never would have started boxing. 100%.
And I was very clear. And one that stuck out to me was that photo, and I put it in the slide with you and James Toney. In terms of natural fighting ability, how many can you count on one hand that would be able to compete with James Toney in his prime? And tell us how a matchup in their prime for prime now, mythical matchup, Artur versus the great James Toney.
Right. That would be a tremendous fight. And I'll tell you a funny thing. James is known to be, brash and doesn't give a lot of people credit. but I'll tell you what, the last time I saw him a few months ago, we were in Atlantic City, and he's like, man, that guy you got, that guy, he didn't say his name. He's like, man, that guy you got, light heavyweight champ, that guy can fight, man. That guy's good. And James, he was really like complimentary towards Artur.
That's actually shocking.
No, it kind of surprised me, but he made it a point to tell me that, like that he's really good. He's really impressed with him, which I thought was cool. At light heavy, James obviously is not as physically strong as Artur, and the conditioning might not be there, like Artur. But the skills, James, the ability to relax and pick shots, and man, that's a tough one. Like there's a lot of guys. I don't know if there's a lot, but there's guys that Artur, they would be some all-time high-level fights, because number one is Artur's skill, but also his power, equalizes everything. And, him and James Toney at light heavy is, and not talking super middleweight or middleweight, but light heavy, depending on which James shows up, it's a tough fight for both guys, because James was a funny guy at light heavy. Sometimes even in bigger fights, he didn't look so hot, but then there's a few times when you say, man, okay, he looked really good. I think James Toney, that was his weakness, is that, his inconsistency. And he would
up and down to his competition. Yeah.
And he would still win when he wasn't at his best. He would still win fights. But
Evander Holyfield was like that as well.
Right. But you take a guy like you take Floyd and you take Roy Jones, two guys who I'd say they were sharp in their prime every fight out. Like they were always in great shape. They always, Roy always came in with abs. He always prepared. And James was very inconsistent. I think James being consistent, man, imagine, I mean, he's already one of the greatest fighters of all time. But imagine if he had the focus and the drive of other guys, what he could have done.
Okay, we've got another mythical matchup for you, John. Artur versus the Mongoose, Archie Moore.
That's, it's so hard to say because,
different eras, yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you what's funny is like the videos that you watch of all those guys from back in the day, they're not clear. They're always like grainy and everything. And it's really hard to appreciate them because, you don't see them like, it's not like watching them on HBO where it's clear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, I think even like a guy like Sugar Ray Robinson, I know people who watch his fights and they go, yeah, he's pretty good, and I go, nah, man, like if you saw him in, Technicolor, if you saw him in HBO, you'd be amazed, you'd be mesmerized. But I think the videos that we have kind of take away from their performances a little bit, and so we don't get to appreciate it 100%.
Indeed. Last one, brother, and you brought him up earlier. Superman, Roy Jones Jr., prime for prime, Artur Beterbiev.
Man, I tell you, it's hard to go against Roy Jones. I'll be honest.
Yep.
It's hard, because one thing, I mean, the power of Artur is always going to be a threat. And the fact is, Artur is a much better boxer than people give him credit for. And Roy would be very leery of that. See, if Artur was clumsy and, like what people might perceive him to be, super aggressive, but he's clumsy and he's just a monster. And, Roy would have ate that up. But Roy was smart and Artur's smart. And Roy would be very technical in the fight and take his time. Artur would really have to push himself, being honest. He would have to really push himself to be able to catch up to Roy Jones in 12 rounds. If Roy decided to box, if Roy decided to, really take his time and keep his distance, he couldn't trade with Artur, and and one thing about Roy, he knows that. He's very smart. He knows that. So it's going to depend on who shows up and who's able to implement that style. But I think Roy would immediately see that Artur's a much better boxer than people would give credit for.
Indeed. And that's already the case. Right now I'm cursing my neighbor because you would think his lawn is about 12 acres by the sounds of it. Chihuahua. But here we're going to have a couple more fact or fiction. I do need to get your thoughts. And this is regarding the card, the brilliant card from Saudi Arabia on June 1st. And here it is, fact or fiction. Deontay Wilder will get knocked out by the Big Bang, Zhilei Zhang, on June 1st and will still insist that he's blessed post-fight.
Yeah. I gotta admit, his interviews are unintentionally amusing. He doesn't mean to be amusing, but they become amusing. And yeah, Hash said the same thing I was thinking. I can't hear any lawnmower in your background. I don't hear anything. So you're good.
Thank you, guys.
So you're good. But yeah, I think Wilder's unintentionally amusing with the stuff he says. I don't know. He it appears, and it could be, that power is an equalizer, right? So
oh yeah.
Who knows? He could go out there and knock this guy out in a minute. He could. But if the last fight of Wilder's any indication, it would seem he's on the other side of midnight, right? That's what it would appear to be. If I had to bet, I'd have to bet against him. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, but if I was, I would have to bet against him. You can't see him in the last performance and then go, yeah, I feel confident betting on him to win this fight. But like I say, some guys have a bad night, they're unmotivated, whatever the case may be, and they but with that power, I wouldn't feel comfortable betting against him either.
No, and I can't wait to see how it unfolds. And once again, that's the allure of the heavyweight division. It truly is the theater of the unexpected.
Right.
Question from our brother Andre. Thank you for joining us, sir. He says, Ice, is it true that for years James Toney would enter any gym and challenge whomever for a sparring session?
Well, I mean, I'll say this. I've heard that, but I've never actually seen it. But I've been in the gym with James, and I can assure you that James would spar anyone on earth. There's not a man on earth he would not spar. And I will say this, Andre Rodriguez, if you want to see some of the best high-tech sparring ever, go to YouTube and look up Gerald McClellan against James Toney from the Kronk Gym. I believe it was 1990. They have sparring of James and Gerald, and it is really, really, you go to YouTube and check it out. It's really, really, really good work. Really good.
And that's the thing I always loved about hanging out with Emmanuel. He would pop in a VHS and show me some of the wars that were from the Kronk. And I was like, goodness gracious, these are better than most fights that I've ever seen.
Right.
What is the very best sparring session that you've ever seen, John?
I mean, I've seen a lot, right? But I'll tell you this: one of the best ones, one that I could say sticks out in my mind immediately. Roy Jones and Reggie Johnson. Reggie was a future light heavyweight champ at the time. Middleweight. Matter of fact, Reggie was only like 3 months away from winning the middleweight title when he fought Steve Collins. And him and Roy, I remember him and Roy really put in some good work. That was impressive. That one always stood out to me. I've seen Roy Jones spar with a lot of people. I've seen James Toney spar with guys. I've seen Marlon Starling spar. Just so many guys. Chad Dawson. And I've seen Chad with a few guys. Chad and Edwin Rodriguez, La Bamba. Remember?
La Bomba. Yeah.
Edwin and Chad had some really good sparring. I'll tell you what, Chad and Yusuf Mack had some. Yusuf Mack gave him good work. And I'll tell you another guy who was really good, was he's a Cuban, Orlando. I think his last name is Despania. I don't know if it's Orlando Despania. You can look him up. He fought James Pascal as an amateur, but a Cuban named Despania. And he definitely fought Pascal as an amateur, I think, in the Olympics. Him and Chad was really good work as well.
Yeah, it was Jordani Despania. Yep.
Jordani's really dark-skinned Cuban guy. And he him and Chad was some good work. And actually, he was a guy who helped us a great deal because him and Yusuf Mack in the particular training camp with Chad, they were doing really, really good stuff that Chad was having a lot of trouble with. And I had to figure out how to go against that, how to counter that. And so those guys as sparring partners, they really stepped up and made me think and made me do my job and made me come up with something to help figure out how to do better with them. So they're two examples of two guys who were high-level boxers, and they were serving as sparring partners. So, a lot of people over the years, and I thought this as a kid too, but I was obviously wrong. Like, I thought sparring partners were just, regular guys that come in and but, I see with Artur in his camps, there's guys, so many guys that come in from around the world. And to be honest, I've never even heard of half of these guys before they got to camp with us. I didn't know who they were. And I'm like, man, these guys are good. Like there's guys all over the world I've never heard of, and these guys are nice. Like these guys can really fight. And there's a kid, Callum Simpson from England, who's doing very well now. And man, Clay Waterman from Australia was in there with us, and just a bunch of guys. Just there's so many good fighters out there, and I'm seeing them in the gym on a regular basis.
So Ice, very quickly, because we know we have to say goodbye, and oh my gosh, it almost feels like we're just getting started. So yeah, we need to make this. We'll talk soon, but I would love to make this a regular segment on War Week Boxing. It would be an honor for us. But Chief Funky, our brother, didn't Roy go on to beat Reggie Johnson?
Yes, in I believe it was 1999 in Biloxi, Mississippi. I was there, and I know that because I fought in Philadelphia the day before, and I caught a flight to Mississippi, and Roy fought Reggie, and Roy won a 12-round decision. Yes.
And now that we're on Roy, let me just leave you with this, and I wanted to ask you, because here's the super fight at 175 that never happened. Who wins, Jones or Michalczewski? Prime for prime.
I think Roy completely beats Michalczewski. Complete.
So did I, and I believe in my heart of hearts that's why it never happened. Because I think the Tiger knew that as well.
Well, Roy didn't want to go to Germany.
For the obvious reasons.
Yeah, and the problem with those guys, with Maskey and those guys, Rachigiani, they didn't need to come to America. They were making so much money. Like when I fought Henry Maskey for the title, I wasn't a mandatory defense. I was a voluntary defense. And even to fight me in a voluntary, he made millions. They didn't need to come to America to make money. They were making money over there, and they make so much money. I made money. I made a lot of money doing endorsements. When I fought Maskey and Rachigiani, I made good money. They make way more than I do. And so they can make a whole fight purse just with putting a name on their trunks or wearing a hat or a t-shirt. So it's a different world over there.
Well, I will say this, and last but definitely not least, what the hell happened to boxing in Germany? Do you have any idea? Because, yeah, you're absolutely right. It was a massive mainstream sport. That's why the Klitschko's resided there. So what happened?
I don't know, because they had Rachigiani, they had Michalczewski, they had Maskey, they had
Spanaki,
Artur Abraham, and it was amazing. Marco Huck was over there. They had a stretch. They had a good run there, and they were making. I went there as a trainer. I went there, I think, 4 times, just for with fights. We fought guys over there. Big fights, humongous crowds, like crowds that crush American crowds. Way more people.
It was always a special event.
Right, for sure. I think when I fought Maskey, there was a rock group, and I'm not really into music, so I don't know the name of the group, but they were very like, people were amazed and they played at our fights. They were at the fight playing like the ring walk music, and I forget who they were, but they were
sure
like,
it wasn't David Hasselhoff.
But the major rock band. I forget who it was. I think, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think Tina Turner even was at a fight one time and like sang at the fight. It might have been a Chris Eubank fight when he fought Rachigiani. It's just the England, Europe in general I've been to a lot of fights in Europe. It's a different vibe over there.
Very well could have been the Scorpions. That's my favorite German band of all time.
Yeah, I think that's who it was. Yeah, I don't know how he knew that, but yeah.
Good call, Sly.
Was.
Yeah, I tell you what, my favorite German band of all time. And Andre says, and this might make sense to you, boxing in Germany fell into Frankfurt domain. My girlfriend is German, and I go there a lot, and I talk with fighters and promoters. Frankfurt took it over, and losing Dusseldorf meant the loss of cash. I went there with Emmanuel to Dusseldorf, and it was like a festival. Like, you know how the Red River Challenge between the Longhorns and the OU Sooners.
Yeah.
That's how it felt. It felt like a big festival and a special event. And yeah, when's the last time you've actually felt that in the States?
Yeah, not often.
Well, let's hope that May 4th delivers in terms of big fight feel. But last thing, John, when do you guys plan on packing up and leaving for Saudi Arabia? Are you guys going to get there 3 weeks before?
3 weeks, yes.
To get acclimated to the time, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Your parting shots for our listening audience, and please give us an idea of what to expect on June 1st.
Well, I mean, we're gonna come prepared. Obviously, you know that. Artur always comes prepared. I think, he's always wanted to fight for the undisputed title. He's always said that. And now that it's here, I really feel like you're going to see an effort bigger than anything he's ever done before, because this is literally a dream for him to fight for the undisputed title. He always mentioned it. So, I think you're going to see something very special in terms of effort and execution. I think Artur's going to really bring everything this time.
And realistically, sir, how much longer can we anticipate seeing the great Artur Beterbiev in the ring?
He's never said anything about retiring at all. I've never heard that enter his mind. And he trains like, and he fights like, and he lives like a young man. So, he could be in the Bernard Hopkins, realm, in that mold where age is just nothing but a number. We've never discussed retirement. Nobody in the gym's ever brought it up, ever.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ice, it's been an absolute honor and an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing the air with us and giving us your precious time. And guys, if you missed any part of this interview, it'll be on the site. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and look for John and all of the fighters that he's working with. And we'll definitely try to get you back on before you embark on your trek to Saudi Arabia. Guys, he's the Iceman, John Scully. Woo! Thank you, John. God bless you, my friend, and best of luck. And we can't wait to see it. June 1st. Couldn't come soon enough. Guys, on behalf of the living legend, Iceman John Scully, I'm Joseph Herron. You've been listening to War Week Boxing. Have a great evening, everybody.
Prince of Darkness. And Affordable Dentures proudly presents the Iceman, John Scully.